Hi, and welcome. I'm Carolyn Gage, and this is Ria T. DeLulo, and we are here for a quick minute to talk about the upcoming Zoom reading on January 7th, Georgia and the Butch. This is a reading of selected letters between the celebrated artist Georgia O'Keeffe and a young lesbian, half her age, named Maria Chabot, who has been largely written out of history, along with their intense 9-year relationship that was so key to George's work. And we are doing this project in order to write her back in. Information on how to register for this free event may be found below the video. So I'm a playwright, and Ria is the founder and director of The Skeleton Represents, which is a new works development company in New York with a mission to explore modern myth through the sincere practice of craft. They're also a very talented actor and will be reading the letters of Maria Chabot. Ria also collaborated with me on the selection of the letters. So welcome, Ria. And what was it that attracted you to this project?
Hello, Carolyn, and thank you for having me and inviting me into this process. I know writing can be an intimate thing, and collaborating with someone on choices is not always easy. And these two women certainly didn't make it easy on themselves or on their writing. But I found myself just super excited about this project, in no small part because of Carolyn, how you write and how you go about writing historical figures in particular. Having been exposed to, Esther and Vashti taking place in a sort of mythological scale past with 24 actors, and writing lesbians into history in that way, all the way to something like this, a small two-hander set in the mid-20th century, using found text as the only source for the written word on the page. It just tickled all of my interests and all of my fancies. And I'm a big fan of looking into history for who has been left out and how can we write them back in. I think that fits my mission of exploring modern myth well, and it certainly fits, I think, what you do. And so this just seemed like a really fantastic intersection to get to play together and do meaningful work. This feels like a meaningful project.
Oh, yes, I feel like it is too. And I do think that there are these the women behind the throne. In many famous men, it's a wife or a girlfriend or occasionally a sister or something. And historically, we come to find they collaborated. They actually wrote some of the works that the men had credit for or painted the works. And what's interesting here is it's two women, and Maria is anything but a shadow figure. She's something else. So what was your experience? And also, I just have to say, the passages that Ria picked out were different from the ones I picked out, and the text is very rich because of that, because I'm autistic. And I saw that in all my selections. I saw a very different focus. And Ria is not autistic, and her choices, it just is, it's rich. It's been a rich collaboration. The experience has been rich, and I hope you'll join us for it. So Ria, what was your experience reading the letters?
An act of devotion is probably the first layer to it. It's a 550 page tome, so it's and the font is tiny, y'all. It's a choice to read every single letter all the way through with care and compassion. And so even just that alone lets me know that these two women cared very much for each other, that they played huge roles in each other's lives, regardless of the contents of the letter, which can sometimes, in particular from Georgia, feel thin or cold sometimes compared to the exuberance with which Maria writes. The other part of reading them that's kind of exciting and interesting and challenging is that they, it's not like today with email where there's a very clear linear timestamp in our capacity to receive and send messages. Maria would write a letter and then a week later, she'd write 3 letters in 3 days. And then Georgia's response to that letter, that first letter from a week ago, would arrive. So it's even just the act of reading them, you're kind of, it's almost like being on a slinky and looking at it, the tube way, and you're like, oh, these points are overlapping. Actually, they don't go all the way through cleanly. So that is interesting. And then the fact of what they're saying to each other when they're not in the same place. When they're writing letters, they're living 2 really different lives in 2 very different places in the world. And we don't have what happened in all those months they spent together, often living under the same roof.
That was the hardest thing in theater. They're like, don't tell us, show us. And here it's like, we're not privy to, you don't need to write letters with somebody you're living with. It was when Georgia would go in the fall back to Manhattan, and they would write letters until it was spring. And we can guess what happened from letters in the fall that are referring to the summer. But the intimacy, the physical proximity to each other is off stage. And so it's a challenge for the actors and the audience also. We're going to have to supply that ourselves. And it breaks the cardinal rule of playwriting. But I think we're compensated because this really happened. And this is one of the most famous women in history. This is an enormously significant relationship. Nobody knows about it. How did that happen? And more to the point, why did that happen? But I cut you off because I'm good at that. So go ahead.
No, I think we're doing great.
Right, just leave them wanting more, right?
Just let them come watch. It's gonna be fun.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Rhea. And we're going to have a question and answer time after the reading, and this is so amazing. Zibby Wilder, who is the great niece of Maria and a world authority on her life and her work, is going to join us for that talk back. So honestly, you do not want to miss this. So help us make some lesbian history in the new year, and don't forget to register below.